Currency crisis, striking doctors and opposition protests. It's a year since the ouster of Zimbabwe's strongman Robert Mugabe, and the country's troubles are far from over. The new government's hoping an ambitious reform programme can help change its economic fortunes. Unfortunately, soaring inflation and mounting debts mean progress of reform has been slow. I spoke to the man tasked with getting Zimbabwe's economy back on track. The Finance Minister, Mkhuli Mukube, has just delivered his first budget and told me his plan to tackle the country's economic problems.
The budget recognizes that we have a twin deficit challenge, which is that we have a fiscal deficit as well as a current account deficit, but also we need to deal with our external arrears in terms of debt restructuring. So two things that are confounded, or rather, magnified by the arrears.
Right, so the budget deficit, though, you can deal with by, you can't really cut too much because the nation is already extremely poor and further cuts would hit the hardest hard.
Well, my approach there has been twofold. One is obviously budget cuts in terms of the wage bill rationalization. And on that front, the president of the country, His Excellency Mnangagwa, is leading from the front. He cut his salary by 5%. We all cut our salaries by 5% as ministers to show leadership in terms of cost containment, in terms of austerity. We've also expanded the revenue base by following on the informal sector, which has expanded, by the way. The economy is 40% bigger than we thought. So in order to expand the coverage, we introduced a 2% financial transactions tax. So those two together, cost containment and revenue expansion, have worked very well for us in terms of fiscal discipline and fiscal consolidation. Richard, you'll be surprised that in the last month of October, we balanced the budget. In fact, we have a primary surplus. So we're making progress after only 3 months, in this new government.
You still need your lenders to write off or redo your debts.
That's correct. We need to have our debts restructured, shall we say, so that we can open up Zimbabwe for investment and international credit lines. We are re-engaging. And that is a two-step procedure. First of all, we had to get our economic reform program, which is enshrined in a document called the Transitional Stabilization Program, accepted globally. We've done that. We've sold it nationally. And then we'll move really into first phase, which is to clear the debt arrears for the African Development Bank and the World Bank, which is what you call the preferred creditor IFIs. We're determined that in the next 12 months that is done, and then we'll move on to the third phase, which is basically the Paris Club negotiations with the bilateral creditors.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
In terms of how you're going to open the economy, make it more attractive for foreign investment, who look for a rule of law, who look for stability, look for good gains, obviously. What can you promise them on those fronts, particularly the rule of law?
First of all, let me say that Zimbabwe is open for business already. Zimbabwe is easily the biggest buy in Africa right now on any asset. You're talking about the rule of law. Literally, this is about property rights at the end of the day. Property rights are secure in Zimbabwe with a judiciary that works. We have contract enforceability conditions that work. We have rule of law that works. And we have a list of other institutional reforms that we're putting in place, including improving the ease of doing business conditions and putting in place a one-stop shop to make it easy for investors to come in. Clearly, Zimbabwe is the biggest buy in Africa right now.
And the problem with the biggest buy is that it also gives the opportunity for the biggest corruption. You're aware of that. The more opportunity and a nation opening up, a selling off of assets can give. We saw it in Russia. We've seen it elsewhere. It's not new. You're familiar with it. What are you going to do to deal with the transparency and corruption issue?
We are dealing with corruption. We're becoming more transparent. We have zero tolerance policies on corruption. This is enshrined in the budget.
How many people have been locked up?
Oh, a lot of people have been locked up. Absolutely. We're intolerant of corruption. We're dealing with it, and we're desirous to engender transparency everywhere. We've said so in our budget. We've said so in our TSP, or Transitional Stabilization Program, and in our Vision 2030, which seeks to put Zimbabwe in upper middle income status by that date. We have zero tolerance on corruption.
Can you understand why some might be at least sceptical, some would even be cynical, though, at the ability of Zimbabwe to clean up the economy and to run a well-ordered economy? The history is against the country.
In the new dispensation, we have said that we don't want to focus on politics. We're focusing on economic revival. That's why we have launched this new stabilization program, and as an enactment, program for our Vision 2030. We're focusing on the economy. We're determined to put it on the right path for prosperity and for investors to profit from, as long as they work with us. They should believe in us. We have strong institutions.
Why should they believe in you?
Because we're walking the talk. For the first time, we are walking the talk. We are doing everything that we said we will do. We're measuring the results. We're very results-oriented. If you look at our Transitional Stabilization Program, it is a results-based policy enactment program.